It's going to
Mhm.
be hard for you to implement standards when they're older, and you say to them, "Hey, you're in sports now. You can't give up." But they're like, "I've seen you give up your entire life."
Ooh. Welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. This is the podcast for dads of all seasons to learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can go and equip the next generation for success. Here we sit down with everyday dads just like you to learn from their story, get inspired, and then start getting after it. So we invite you to join in, see what you can take away from this story, and apply to your life on your journey to becoming the Skilled Dad. Hey guys, and welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. My name's Zach Reeser. I'm your host, and today we're going to have fun as usual, but I've got like a fellow comrade in the dad space arms with me today, and joining me is Queon Wilcox, otherwise known as Q, and he is the host of Mediocre Dads. He's also currently active within the military, and he and I had an opportunity to catch up, just meet each other, because we always like to know who we're talking to usually before we jump on this podcast. And we ended up talking for a long time. And I was like, this guy's awesome. So I'm excited to have him on. So Q, welcome to Skill Dad Podcast, and thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this because I've seen your stuff and I'm like, I can't wait to be on his show. I'm
I like it.
super excited to give out knowledge and experience I have. It's different, it's diverse, and I hope someone can take something from it. So I'm super excited about today.
Oh, I guarantee they will. And I'm excited too. Glad you're here. And we're gonna have some fun. So you have a lot of stories,
Yeah.
but you've got a really incredible story that you had shared with me. And so, you know, what I like to do is hand it over a little bit and say, hey, tell us about yourself, which everyone hates, but it's always it's always brings up great and interesting things. But you've been doing Mediocre Dads for a year. You just hit your year mark,
Yeah.
didn't you?
March 20th. Yeah.
Yeah, baby. Congratulations on 1 year.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you've been putting out a lot of really good stuff. You've done some solos, you've done interviews, now you're doing live interviews. So I'm excited to see where you continue to take it. And your guests have been really fun to listen to as well. But yeah, tell us a little about yourself, and then let's just take it from there and make sure we hit on a couple topics that we discussed. But let's go, Q. The mic is yours.
All right. Yeah. As he said, I am Quan, but I go by Q, the host of Mediocre Dads. And so, starting in the beginning, before we get to Mediocre Dads, I am originally from Las Vegas, and then I moved to Dallas for a year, and then to Arizona. But Arizona is where I claim to be my home because that's essentially where I really grew up. But I have a twin brother. Me and him were adopted when we were 2 years old, and I tell everybody, and I even told you, we are adopted by a white family, and it's not to, I don't say that to ooh whatever the case might be, but I say that because culturally we were raised differently. And
Mhm.
so my entire life essentially my entire life since 2 all the way up till now has been very different. And I'm very appreciative of that because it's led to one of the reasons why I started Mediocre Dads, which was the essential of having a dad and the presence that dads bring and have in your life. Because I think sometimes if I were not adopted, where I would be and what I would be like. And I would be different, and I
Mm.
don't know where I would be, but I can tell you that discipline, the standards that were in my input into my life came from my dad. And for me, I have no problem saying that the parents who adopted me, those are my parents. My birth parents, I know who my birth mother is. I've spoken to her before.
Mm.
No hard feelings in that regards. But I've never spoken to my birth dad, but still, nonetheless, my parents are the ones who raised me, the ones who still call me, who still talk to me on a daily basis, and all these jazz. And that's who my parents are. But they are the reason who I am today and why, when I was 19 years old, I joined the army, and I was only going to do 4 years. And I'm sure you've talked to several military people before. They say, yeah, I'm only going to do 4 or 2 or 3, whatever the case might be. And then next thing you know, you're at 10 or a little over 10, like myself. And you're like, that was a long 4 years, huh? And so it's
And
been
still
quite a
going.
oh yeah. At this point, I'm gonna finish it out because I'm contractually my current contract ends 2028. But when that comes to an end, I'll be at 14 years. And look, I'm
You're
gonna
over
get
the
that.
hump.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that retirement check at 20 and just and start some other businesses. Still doing the podcast, hopefully, but start some other businesses and other things that I want to do in my life. And
Yeah.
but yeah, no, been in the military over 10 years. I've deployed to Afghanistan before. I have been to Poland, Germany, Kuwait, Djibouti. I don't recommend the Djibouti or Kuwait. It's extremely hot and
Mm,
it smells over there. But yeah, I've been to several different places while in the military. Have gotten to do some pretty cool things, and ultimately, the one of the hardest parts about being in the military, being active for that matter, is when there's a conflict or something happens and you have to leave,
yeah.
and your family's back home. But anyway, that's a little bit about who I am. I know I don't want to get to go on a tangent here. I can, I promise. I
That's okay. I'll stop you. I mean, we're just having a conversation. But so, how many kids do you have?
have two daughters.
Yep, it's 2 daughters. And how old?
One is 5, about to be 6 in May, and the other one is 1 and a
Okay.
half. Yeah, 1 and a half.
Yeah, that's right. You're doing the podcast with a baby in the house, and
Oh, yeah.
are you sleeping? I always ask the question.
Uh,
People under 2,
I'm not gonna lie. So I get this is how I'm able to operate, and it's been years because of the military. So
right?
if I get 4 hours of sleep, I'm gonna get through the day, but at 8 o'clock, I'm gonna be passed out. If I get 5 hours of sleep, that's almost like normal. 6 hours of sleep, basically normal. I average between 5 or 6. If I get 7 or 8 hours, oh man, I don't know what to do with myself. I feel like a new person. So I average between 5 or 6. So
All right. Some people operate really well off 5 or 6. I'm
yeah.
just gonna say, like, everyone's clock is different. Though they say that you need 8, and there's different studies that say different things. But 5 or 6, and with a 1-year-old, that's not bad, man.
My
So
wife's a champion. What
all
she
all of
holds
our
it
wives are
down.
champions. Yeah,
Yeah.
just the time that you and I have had together. Yeah, our wives are champions with
Yeah.
allowing us to. I shouldn't say allow, taking on some of the additional stuff while we work on this as well,
Mhm.
because you're doing active duty. You got your job,
Yep.
you got your kiddos, and the podcast work is a lot of work. If you're doing, I know
Oh,
some guys like ship it out and third party it, which is awesome. That's a lot of work if you're doing it on your own.
oh,
So
yeah.
the more we can come together and share tips to make it faster and better, all the better. But with 5-year-old, and you've been in for almost 14, you said? Or no, you will be
Oh, oh, I'll
for
be
like
14 in 2028, but, at
20.
right now, I'm at 10 and a half.
Yeah. Okay. I jumped ahead to 2028. Don't want to do that yet. But 10 and a half, you're halfway through. But even so, during your deployments, you had baby at home.
It was my when I deployed to Poland and Kuwait, yes, I had baby at home, and actually my deployment to Kuwait was second one was cooking, if you will. I left 2 weeks after we did a gender reveal.
Yeah.
So I lied. No. So we did a gender reveal, and then the very next day I got on a plane, I left to Kuwait. Oh, yeah, so, like, that was when for my second daughter, but yeah, so deployment to Afghanistan was a little different. We didn't get pregnant until I came back. For those who are your audience in the military, call those
Yep.
deployment babies.
Yep.
So came back, at first I was like, "Nah, I don't want a kid," and then sure enough, 6 months later, we found out on our anniversary actually that she was pregnant. Yeah.
I'm curious because I know that some of the guys that are listening are either former military or active. I know we've got both. And quick, small sidebar that
Mhm.
you and I just had this conversation. I'm gonna bring it up. I'm bringing it up
Okay.
because I've had friends that I've asked. And so for those of us that have not served, but we have friends that have served, or we meet someone, right? And the term "thank you for your service." And I know now it's popped up so much. There's varied opinions on it. But for us dads that are listening, we want to show respect. We want to support all those things, but we also don't want to put anybody in a weird spot. What is the best way to approach that? But I know there's varied opinions on that. So,
It
we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. I won't put you on the spot.
No, no, you're good, you're good. I was gonna tell you, I'm gonna add to my answer that I gave you,
Okay.
okay, originally before we actually got on here. So me personally, I don't it doesn't I don't need it. I don't need to receive it, but I'm not going to tell people not to do it because I don't wanna it's like one of those things like, "Oh, okay, I'm not gonna thank you for your service then, but I'm supposed to," right? You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, right? I would say Thank you for your service means a lot more. And this is me adding to my answer though. But this is thank you for your service means a lot more to those who didn't receive it, who didn't get it when they were leaving. Meaning, so
Mm,
back in Korea, Vietnam, especially those in Vietnam and Desert Storm, those who've actually experienced something that is truly a PTSD worthy and traumatic, as such as that, as being in those involved those conflicts. Those are a generation of soldiers who deserve the thank you for your service because they didn't get it when they left and they didn't get it when they came back. And
mm,
so for me, when I see someone who has the Korean veteran or Vietnam vet, I thank them for the service because they didn't get that when they came back. And so that
mm,
they genuinely, it's not they need to hear it from us, but it makes them feel validated in a lot of ways of, hey, I did it. I wore the uniform and whatever the case might be. Is especially when I'm in uniform and I see those guys and they do their own salute and they shake our hands and I'm like, hey, no, thank you for your service. And they're like, oh no, because they thank me for my service. I'm like, no, thank you for your service. Understand like what you did and the impact that you had. Because after
yeah,
9/11, there's everyone was a lot of people, I won't say everyone, was like, yeah, hey, we support our military, we support our troops and all that. So the support hasn't really wavered in
yeah.
in that regard, and I personally, I guess, I just don't feel like I've done enough to earn someone saying, "Hey, thank you for your service." And so I guess that's where the weirdness for me comes, whereas I don't feel like I've done enough for someone to be like, "No, thank you for your service." I'm like, if you know what I do on a daily basis, I don't know if you would say that.
I have an idea of what you do on a daily basis, and it's pretty cool. But that makes total sense. That completely makes sense. So someone during a time where there's less support
Yeah,
for what was going on, and they come home after those wars, especially sacrificing a lot, seeing a lot of stuff, and come home to an unwelcome home. That's a way to show that appreciation, albeit a bit late. From a layman's perspective, I will say, with roughly 1.4 million active out of 300 plus million, I appreciate what you do. And
oh,
all the guys
thank you.
listening, we appreciate what you do because 1.4 million out of 300 plus million, there's a lot going on in the world. And for men and women to step up and to do that, that's incredibly important. So that's going to be my awkward form of saying, you rock, keep it going. And we do appreciate it. So thanks for answering that from your perspective.
Yeah,
And for those that are listening, I'd love to hear your perspective too. Shoot me an email at Zach@SkilledDad. I'd love to hear just what you got. But at the end of the day, all of us on here are either dads. I know there's some moms listening too. All of us are parents, and we all have a duty as
yeah,
well in what we do. And it's so part of how you're fulfilling that duty outside of the daily, changing diapers with a 1-year-old and
mhm,
building the foundation for a 5-year-old like your parents did for you. You started Mediocre Dads.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Mediocre Dads, where it came from, why you started it, and what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, so I was last it was, yep, I was last year, and so February timeframe, uh I'm on it's called leave for us, which just basically equivalent to PTO, pay time off. And I'm on leave and I'm hanging out with the family and I tell my wife, I'm like, "Hey, I want to start the podcast that I've been talking about starting a podcast for a couple years at this point." And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, if you want to." And she's heard all of my ideas. She knows I'm like an idea freak where I'm like, "Hey, I want to do this." And she's, "Okay, I guess, yeah, whatever that looks like." And then shortly after, I may go through with it or may not. So to her, it was one of those, if you do it, great. I'll support you. If you don't, it's fine with me as well."
Does that translate as if you do it, that's great, I'll support you. If you don't, I'm not surprised because you have
Yes.
so many ideas.
Yes.
Look,
Yes.
bro, we're cut from the same cloth, so maybe our wives should talk on this one, but
Exactly. Right. Literally, it's, hey, I want to be supportive of you. But at the same time, you told me you were going to build me a deck and you still haven't done that. But we bought all the tools for it.
hey, call me up, man. Like that, let's go get some hands-on work. Yeah, that's good.
Uh, so yeah, no, I started it and like, originally I was going with the title of fatherly teachings, and
Mhm.
I told my wife, I was like, "Yeah, what do you think of fatherly teachings?" And she, in her loving tone, she was like, "It's all right." She, like basically did not have any touch on it. She was like, "If that's what you want to go with." And for a while, I was doing, I was going, and I don't remember how it came to me, but I was just sitting there, I was like, mediocre dads. And I don't know why I literally started like a song. It was like Mediocre Dads, and I just walking around my house saying it. And then from that point on, I told her, I was like, that's it. It's going to be called Mediocre Dads. And she was like, huh, that doesn't sound bad. And I was like, "See, yes, the approval I was looking for." And so that's where the name came from. And then from there, I had my phone, I had some lights, and then I recorded my first episode. I don't know, what was it, 5 or 6 times. And so the first episode that is on my YouTube channel is it's about the Colin Kaepernick story, because I saw it and I was like, boom, I relate to that. That is literally my life. Everything that Colin
Mm,
Kaepernick was talking about. However, I have a different opinion than Colin Kaepernick on how his feelings on his parents and all that jazz. And so I was like, I have to do it. And I was nervous to post it, and I posted it. And then it just took off from there. I had a friend reach out to me, and he was like, "Hey man, I love what you're doing." He goes, "I'm literally in that same boat right now." He was a white guy who was in the process of adopting a black son. And so he was still going through the courts. And he was like, "Hey, I appreciate your perspective on all these things." He goes, "Some things I'd never really thought about, but he goes, I did think about it and I didn't know how to approach these things. But then he goes, you talking about it, he goes, it's definitely given me insights and vision onto what my way forward and how I can further connect with this young man who I want to call my son one day."
mm,
And so eh, that was the first episode. And I was like, I got to keep going. And so I did. And I was happy to, because it was my goal is to help people, right? I want to help people. I want to be able to inspire people. And I know it sounds cliche in a lot of ways. And everybody likes to say, I want to help people too. And I want to talk to people. But one of my purposes in life, I feel, is to help people. And so I've always wanted to be that person that can say something, and hopefully maybe that helps somebody.
yeah.
And so my goal with Mediocre Dads ultimately is to continue to talk to dads, talk to moms, talk to daughters, talk to sons, and talk to them about their relationship with their parents, and build a community where people can say, wow, we have all these different experiences, but ultimately there's this similar foundation in which I can pull this from somebody, and to make themselves better. And the
Yeah.
saying over here with Mediocre Dads is, being mediocre is a choice, refuse to be mediocre. And so my thing is, you have to refuse to be mediocre. You cannot just accept mediocrity and say, well, it is what it is. And
Hmm.
that's with any aspect of being a dad, right? One of the main things that comes to my head is being physically fit. Is a lot of the dad bod thing, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are, oh man, the dad bod where you got the beer belly and all that, and whatnot, what the case might be. But I think that in a way, that a lot of ways, that's accepting mediocrity. That's accepting the
Mm,
fact that I'm a dad now, so this is acceptable. It's not like, we are called to lead our children and set the standard for our children. And if the standard that we set is, you can eat how you want, drink how you want, and whatever the case might be, that is what they're going to follow. It's going to
hmm.
be hard for you to implement standards when they're older, and you say to them, "Hey, you're in sports now, you can't give up." But they're like, "I've seen you give up your entire life."
Ooh.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. That's the unsaid stuff. Yeah.
and it stings, and then you're like, "Dang, that kind of hurt." That really, it's like a sucker punch, but it's not a sucker punch. It's a reality check. And my dad, even when I was growing up, he would do push-ups, pull-ups. He had his own pull-up bar that he made in the garage with a brass piping, and just put it on the garage or whatever. And we would do
Yeah.
pull-ups, and we'd have a pull-up competition between me, my twin brother, my older brother, and my dad. And I remember being like 5 or 6 and just being able to pull myself above the bar like it was nothing, because I weighed nothing. And it
Right.
was like, but it was fun. And that was like my introduction into physical fitness, and seeing my dad, even as he's gotten older, every day, he'll go for a run every morning. He'll do push-ups, he'll do his pull-ups. And that's what he does. And he eats well. And he'll even tell me, he's like, yeah, I got to do a detox. I need to cleanse my body because I've been eating bad. And his form of eating bad is like, he had like a few donuts, and now he's, oh my goodness, I've done a terrible job. But he set the example for me and my brother, that when we joined the military and doing the physical aspect of things, I was like, I did get into the mindset of, oh, I can accept this dad bod thing. And I got up to 270 pounds,
Wow.
and
How tall
uh,
are you?
5'8". So that
Ooh.
is not a good look at all whatsoever. And so 270 pounds, and I'm just, and in the army, that's not acceptable whatsoever. And even this, how it happened, I was 207 pounds. This was February, the same February, I was talking to my wife about starting Mediocre Dads. And so that February, I made a decision. I signed up for the gym. I started going to the gym. I started listening to what is it called? I can't remember the book name, but I'll remember it and I'll bring it up. But
Sure.
anyway, I was listening to a book, an audiobook. I know I'm a weirdo. I'll listen to audiobook in the gym. and
You're not alone. Apparently,
and
there's a lot of weirdos on this thing, so you're good.
yeah, no,
Good company.
I'll listen to podcasts and audiobooks. I'll rarely listen to music. I'm not even gonna lie to you. And so
Whatever gets the motor running on
yeah,
the treadmill or working out or whatever fires me up.
exactly. So I started, I committed myself. I was working out, started Mediocre Dads as well. And then April, I was 235 pounds.
Nice.
And I had put out 5 or 6 episodes of Mediocre Dads. And so the standard of what being a dad for me was changing through the actions that I decided to fix
Yeah.
within myself. So anyway, yeah, I just there's the impact that dads have and that we if we came together and we spoke to each other more rather than this idea of we can't share our experiences, our emotions, our feelings. When women get together, that's one of the things that they do. If we can do that, we can do that as men. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to look the same way as how women do it, and there's nothing wrong with how women do it, but it's we as men can do it, and we can share experiences to help grow each other.
Yeah. And I was gonna say oftentimes the acceptance of we'll stick to the whole dad bod concept for right
Yeah,
now. But let's just say the acceptance of that, usually there's something else driving some of that. And the eating can be a coping thing or drinking, or there's a lot of different things that can be that piece that's causing that acceptance. Or some would say it looks like, and maybe we're not, but it looks like you're just giving in, you're giving up.
yeah,
And there's a lot of different health things that can contribute to that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about I'd rather go and sit and watch Netflix for hours while eating whatever I want and not eating maybe some of the things that would be better for me. And the kids are seeing that, like you said. And someone used this analogy on the podcast, and he has some health coaching background as well. And that's my wife's area outside of her day job. But this theme has come up in a number of conversations lately. And I'll use the airplane analogy. They tell you to, if you're flying with kids, they tell you to put your mask on first if there's an issue. Put your mask on first and then put the mask on the kids. Why is that? Because if you go unconscious, your kids are in jeopardy because they're not maybe of the age and ability to put that mask on. You got to take care of yourself so that you can take care of them. For those that are in some of the security area, protection area, things like that, if you're wounded in a fight, you got to take care of yourself so that you can stay in the fight.
yep,
Because if you don't, then you can't help anybody. So the same rule applies here, I think, when it comes to the health piece, both physically and mentally, and to the feelings and emotions and varied opinions on the word vulnerability. It's become a buzzword these days, which is unfortunate. But the relationship that we have with our friends, when we've got those guys that we can trust and that they know I've got their back and they've got my back, that's when we have those conversations. It's not necessarily going up to a guy that you meet at the airport and be like, "Hey, man, let me tell you about some of these things going on." Like, that's
yeah,
not usually maybe that's how you operate. That's not how I operate, but
no,
time and place, exactly. So that's not what we're saying there. Um, but no, you're right on. So you recognize that, and I want to ask you a question from we got two dads, two guys that are running platforms with the intent to help other men, other dads.
mm,
And you mentioned this is what makes me think about it is that you started this and you had lost, it sounds like roughly 45 pounds. Am I doing the math right?
at that point, yeah,
Okay. 2 months after you
yeah,
started hitting the gym, which is
mhm,
killer. Increase that protein intake and start shredding a little bit. But you said that as you had 5 episodes in, you started reflecting on some of your own stuff. As I've done this thing, not only do I reflect, but like I catch myself a lot more because I'm like, I can't talk about it and not work on it or recognize it's just so much more glaring. Have you run into that where you're like, oh man, I really gotta up my game?
100%. I remember I did an episode and I was talking about discipline when it comes to disciplining our kids. And so growing up, I was spanked, and I even said in the episode that I was talking about when I was talking about this that I don't think there's anything wrong with getting spanked. I don't think there's anything wrong with spanking your kids. However, what I do think is wrong is after everything your kids do, you spank them. And
Mm,
so I was going down the path of I was talking about it on the podcast where I was like, yeah, you shouldn't spank your kids after everything. And I noticed or I caught myself, I was like, but I found myself using spanking as a tool to try to get my daughter to listen rather than having a conversation. So
mm,
immediately after the episode, I go into her room. She's asleep already. I kiss her goodnight, or whatever the case might be. And then the very next day, I remember she did something and I caught myself and I said, all right, hey, I sat down. I said, hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. And let's figure out why you did what you did and understand why what you did is wrong and why it's wrong, why you shouldn't do it. And now I don't do that because I'm like, I want to be do this gentle parenting thing, whatever the case might be. I
right.
did it because when I was growing up, one thing that it's not to critique my dad or anything. One thing that I noticed was a lot of things that I did when I got in trouble was spanking rather than "Hey, talk to me," you
Hmm.
know? And I'm not again, this is not to attack my dad in any way, but it's me realizing, okay, it was a tool. I think it was an overutilized tool. And now that I'm in that position, am I going to just follow the trend or am I going to change it so that my kids have an out so my kids understand that dad's not here to just punish them. Dad's here to have fun and talk to them, but also set the standard, right? You have left
Right.
and right limits, and I'm here to set those standards and make sure you don't go past those left or right limits. And
Yeah.
so that just with that, like my daughter doesn't they don't get spanked often at all. Actually, truthfully, it happens maybe once a month, but mostly, especially my older daughter. My younger daughter, she's too young to get spanked, but my older daughter, it's conversations. It's
Hmm.
I want her to work on her emotional intelligence. I think as kids, one of the things that with my family, my parents was we weren't working on emotional intelligence until too late in life where it was like, hey, if I learned this lesson when I was 5 or 6 of how to manage your emotions, man, imagine me 16-year-old Quan being able to say, okay, I'm getting angry, I'm getting upset. Why am I getting angry? Why am I getting upset? Okay, is it worth me to push this kid or even poke him in the forehead or whatever to make me feel more powerful or better? Or is it
Hmm.
worth it just to walk away and say it's not worth it because I'm getting angry and he may not and even understand why I'm getting angry? And
Hmm.
so, again, didn't find this out, didn't recognize how to do that until I was older and I had gotten in the military. And I wouldn't say it was too late, but there were situations where it was basically it's like, hey man, it's too late. You're behind the power curve. There are a lot of people who've already learned these tools and techniques. And now I'm over here having to learn it at 23, 24, as I'm sitting across this young person and I'm trying to discipline them and because they did something wrong or whatever in the military. And I'm like, okay, I can get really mad and just be like, "Ha, I have more power than you because I have more rank than you," or I
Right.
could rationalize and use emotional intelligence here so you understand and we both come to a better conclusion. We can work together in the future. And so,
Right.
yeah, that's one thing that I've learned from my episodes. I find myself talking about something and I'll be like, "Ooh, how is it that it's a hypocrite? I'm a hypocrite. I can tell people on my podcast to do something, do one thing, and then I turn off the camera and I go do the opposite of what I just told you to do." And
Right.
so now I'm always like, okay, I can't do that. I don't want to be that hypocrite. I want to be, again, set the standard.
Yeah.
Main thing as a dad, we set the standard.
Yeah. Someone once said where to be, even a leadership role, whether a leadership role, the dad role, which is a leadership role, is we're to be the thermostat, not thermometer. And
Hmm.
so set the tone. And it's when we're teaching on how to build emotional intelligence, if we're delivering discipline with lack of emotional intelligence and a lot of heat and things like that, it comes off differently, I think, than what we would hope for. It's more along the lines of whatever the punishment is that it's delivered with the why. They need to understand why. It's not just I'm getting disciplined and I think I know why, but I'm not sure why. Maybe when you're yelling at kids, it's like static. If you coach baseball teams, soccer teams, anything like that, and you've got coaches yelling at kids all the time, and you see them like go like this, that's what they're hearing. It's so bring it down a notch, have the stern tone, and know that you mean business, but it's not emotionalism. So that's a great point. And yeah, the hypocrite thing, we're all learning.
Yeah.
No one's a perfect dad, and I haven't met him yet, like physically here within this world here. But you and I are getting better through it, and I can't speak for you, but I know when guys reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, I heard Q say this," I realized, shoot, I was doing that, and I stopped in the moment because it made me think of it, that story. That's happened a few times where someone will send me feedback. I heard so and so say this. I just realized in the moment I was doing it and I stopped and I tried something different. And man, it was crazy. We're all learning together, but
Yeah, I always tell people is the goal, especially in the guise of discipline, is to correct the action. It's not to if you. I heard this thing once, and you saying if you punish your kids out of anger, and it means say you're angry and you decide to spank your kids, right? Not you, but just in general,
right,
they're angry and decide to spank their kids, right? That's abuse. You're abusing your kids just because you're angry,
right.
right? Not you're not doing that action to correct the action. You're doing that because you're angry. And so as dads, again, we have to we're as our one of our main missions is to set the standard and show teach our kids. So it's I need the goal is to correct the action. If my kid touches the hot stove and I spank them, what what action did I correct? I just caused them more pain, but just in a different spot now, right? I didn't correct the action. The goal is, like I said, ultimately the goal is to correct that action or whatever your kids are doing and teach them again the why. We
Yeah.
always believe it or not, even 5 year olds and 6 year olds. That's why they ask us so many questions because they want to know the why to something. They want to understand it. So why wouldn't we teach them the why when they're in trouble, but we'll teach them the why when they say, "Dad, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? Why do people drive on the right side over here in the United States, but then we go over to this country and they're on the left side, they're driving on the wrong side." You know what I mean? Whatever the case
Yeah.
might be. They want to know why just as much as we want to know why. So why wouldn't we do that when especially when they're in trouble?
Yeah. Well, and do you have a why or do you know what your goals are? Like that's what I would back it up to almost is like, and maybe I'm not necessarily saying directly to you, but do you have those left and those right limitations? Essentially the boundaries of acceptance. Because if we have those things and those are so like in our house, lying, stealing, cheating are big no-nos.
Mhm.
Like those are big no-nos because those are big areas that we want to make sure that we're reinforcing so that when they become adults, they're not wanting to lie, steal, and cheat, right? And
Yeah.
so those are three big core areas. We have a couple others, but those are three big areas for us. We don't lie, we don't steal, and we don't cheat. And those come with consequences. But we know like when that line's crossed, boom. Like they can also understand, like we've discussed this. They know what it is. So like the other you use the stove example. That's how many of us haven't accidentally touched a stove? Was it an
Yeah.
accident? Was it things like that? But I think it's just a great opportunity to say, okay, we're going to reinforce actions. Do we know what we're trying to reinforce? Sometimes there's things in the moment you're like, this is bad, but we need to know why too, so we can explain it to them.
Yeah. Yeah. So in my house, I have things that come to my head, truthfully, two things that come to my head are lying and respect. And you could even put lying under respect, but respect, lying, respect, and loyalty. So those three things come to my mind.
Hmm.
And respect is one of my biggest things in my house. Is I'm her dad, my daughter's dad, and my wife is her mom. She can leave this house and go to school and her teacher or whatever. I was like, you would never think or dare to disrespect your teacher. But I said, if the moment you come back here, you feel comfortable to disrespect me or your mom and whatever case might be, because she's 5 or 6. She's got a little attitude she's learning about. I'm like, hey, there's a line between funny and then being disrespectful.
Hmm.
And so I was like, one thing that my responsibility as your dad is to teach you is okay, here's the line and you don't cross it, right? As long as you stay on this side of the line, we all understand it's funny. But the moment you get over this line, okay, now you've crossed the line of disrespecting your parents and even disrespecting other adults potentially, depending where we're at. So
Right.
respect is the biggest thing for me. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Please. Thank you. Just little things in life that if you utilize them in the properly will, can get you into a lot of different places. I've been to a lot of places where I've walked in, I said, "Hey, excuse me, ma'am, I'm trying to look for this." Boom, boom. And next thing I know, because I was kind and respectful, they're giving me more than I asked for because
Right.
this is a genuine person. And I believe in being genuine to everybody because at the end of the day, black, white, Hispanic, whatever you are, right? We're all human beings at the end of the day.
Yep.
And we as human beings, it's this, we should come together, right? I don't understand. Sometimes it's hard to fathom for me is like, why would we want to be at each other's throats? Then they were human beings. We're different, but we're still human beings. We're made up of the same organs, made up of blood and all that jazz, right?
Yep.
And respect in my house is a big thing. And lying, I don't tolerate lying because if you have to lie to me, that means there's some underlying things there that could mean, are you afraid of me? Are you are afraid of the outcome of what that is? And I don't want you to be afraid that you have to feel that to lie to me, especially when you're in serious, as my kids get older and they get into serious trouble. I don't want you to lie to me. Just tell me what it is and let's
Hmm.
figure it out together.
Yeah.
That's my goal. I'm here to support you. Now, understand there are things in this life that are very egregious that I cannot stand behind. But obviously, as your parent, as your dad, I will do everything in my power to help you as I can. But understand there are consequences to everything we do, negative or positive. And then loyalty within my house growing up, I noticed because I had an older sister and older brother, an older brother as well. And so it was me and my brother, and we loved each other. We still love each other, obviously, but and my twin brother. But there was a never sense of we were never taught what it meant to be loyal to each other. So
Hmm.
we at times in high school had no problem talking mess behind each other's back as if we weren't twins. We were just like, yeah, man, screw that dude. He's a piece of crap, blah, blah, blah. But in all actuality, loyal to each other is more important.
Yeah.
A united front. We can say, we can talk to each other in each other's faces all we want, but the moment we leave this house, we're a united front. We're
Yep.
a representation of each other. And so I didn't learn that lesson until later on in life. And so now, when my two daughters, especially, I tell my oldest all the time, I was like, no one will have your back like your sister. I was like, you are her older sister. You are the firstborn. You have an obligation. And it's a heavy burden I'm putting on her shoulders, but you have an obligation to to protect your sister, not take care of her and make sure she has food or anything, but take care of your sister, protect your sister if mom and dad are not there to do. I was like,
Yeah.
you and your sister will always be there for each other and love each other. And that bond that you create is essential now. So when you guys leave when you leave this house, you guys are Wilcoxes, and there is no one that will come in between you two and the Wilcox in that Wilcox family. The moment you come back, if you have something to say, get it off your chest. Y'all figure it out. But the moment you leave this house, you're a representation of this family. And this representation of this family is not going to be a family of who leaves and just has no problem saying whatever, talking outside of their neck to whoever they want about their family members. And
Yeah.
so I want to implement those three things, those three rules, those mainly things as it came to my head within my daughters and what's important and what those left and right limits.
I love that. And it reminds me of, did you play sports in school?
I did. I played basketball.
Okay, basketball. So I played baseball and football. When when you're in the heat of practices or things like that, you can dog each other pretty good, especially if somebody's not holding their weight or we're not holding our weight or all that. The moment the other team dogs that same guy that you had a squabble with, everything shifted. It's,
But
look, I can talk about my team member that way because we fight together, we build together, we challenge each other. Like, we see each other the best and the worst. Like, we can talk to each other that way because we also know there's a core of love and trust there that we need to that we hold strong. We're loyal. You can't talk to my team that way. Now, what we're saying is essentially almost like gossip, right? And gossip is so toxic. Whereas that's like me walking to the other team, be like, man, look at that forward over there. He's the worst. We would
yeah,
probably say other things,
yes,
but that's what we're saying in real life, right? If we're not holding that up. And one thing that came to mind too, when we talk about the kids being a bit of a mirror for us or showing us our opportunities for growth, is that as we're teaching that, the biggest conversation that they hear is how we talk to our spouse.
100%. Oh man, 100%.
Mm.
That's one thing I need to work on. And not work on like I'm not talking down to my wife, but like I want to show my kid, like especially my daughters, hey, if they're gonna get older and they're going to get into relationships and get married and have the kids of their own one day. As much as I don't want that to happen, it's a reality that I know that will come. And every dad who has daughters knows it's a reality that comes. And then when it happens and you see your daughter in love and happy, like my father-in-law did when me and my wife got married, it's a thing of like, all right, hey, I can trust that I'm handing her off to an individual that loves her just as much or even more than I do. And so that's all I can ask for. And anyway, I one thing I want to teach my wife or my kids is, hey, the representation of a man. I'm not perfect, right? Again, whole thing of mediocre dads. I am not the perfect dad, and I'm doing every day to improve, right? Or working every day to improve. That being said, I try to set a standard and tone for my kids to say, okay, hey, this is how a man should talk to you. This is how a man should show love to you. I'm not great at showing affection, but if I come home with flowers for my wife and I give her a hug and a kiss and whatever the case might be, my kids see, okay, my dad loves my mom, and that's what love for one another looks like.
Yeah.
If I put on some Zach Bryan and we start dancing a little bit, that's what they see of, okay, that's what love looks like. And these little micro examples lead to big examples as when we're out and about and say we hold hands or whatever the case might be, which is at this point we got kids in our hands, we're pushing carts, right? Very few far between. It's not because we don't love each other. And we hold hands like, oh, okay, no, my parents do love each other and they're happy to see each other. And so that
Yep.
those small examples to show my kids of like, okay, this is what love looks like, and this is what setting the example looks like. And this is how when they get older, this is how I should be loved by somebody, not the opposite of that, right? Someone yelling
Yeah.
at you, demeaning, belittling, whatever the case might be.
Whether you're at work and when you get home, the privilege and the challenge that we have as dads is that we are always on duty.
Yes.
And those things, sometimes we have to, in this case, I'm talking about myself too. I have to remember those. So I'm just going to go back to this conversation when I have a day where I'm like, I need to remind myself. It's like throwing the Zach Bryan or whatever song that we're going to throw on. But everything that we do, this is more for all of us listening. Everything we do is being seen one way or another, and it's going to be recognized, and it's forming these kiddos into who eventually they will become. And we're a big part of that. And then as they get bigger and they go into school and they have other things, there's other things that are going to form them. The question is, what foundation are they going to have to form off of? So build that clay, and then the fine details will start to work themselves in. But those are some great reminders, my man. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. That's like I said, mediocre. That's the why. One of the reasons why I started is because the opportunity to be vulnerable
Yeah.
in a way that I'm not used to or was never before is now allows other fathers and other men, other parents for that matter, to be vulnerable to say, okay, wow, I've thought about these same things, but I've never heard someone actually say it, or I've never had heard another dad say it. So why do I have shame of being able to say that, especially to my friends who I see might need some correction and guidance, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. We could all be so lucky to have friends close enough to kick us in the pants.
100%.
And if you don't, go find one. And I say that they just you go to the mall and just go find one. I had lunch with a buddy yesterday, and we had a good conversation on this. And then I know, man, time flies on these things. And we were talking about some different ideas that we had. He's an idea guy as well. But in that conversation came the concept of having the people around you to be able to grind through ideas, and also what your wife did with you on the names that you had. It converted to a conversation of friends that take and friends that build like the deep relationships, and the question of which one are you and how does that work? Because having any good relationship takes work and is not going to come easy. So it's like throwing those texts out, making the phone calls, like consistency. And then you have some that will reach out and then they also maybe want something along the way. And there were probably all those. I've been both of those probably in different seasons of my life. Let's call that one out. But if you find yourself right now in a place where you don't have that person that kick you in the pants, you don't have that basketball team you're on anymore, you don't have the football team anymore, just start pinging some people that you really want to have a relationship with. Whoever comes to mind right now, somebody's coming to mind. Shoot them a text. Start it now. It's not too late to start. You just might be starting from a different place. But no, that's why I love having the conversation, especially we're in the same space and we're having like similar conversations with different perspectives and coming from different viewpoints of the world. But it sounds to me like you and I are doing a lot of the same things at home, whether we know it or not, right?
Yeah.
Um, so Q, where can everyone find you and start plugging into what you're putting out?
So I am on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. The website is coming soon. I am in the works of building it. I have the domain name and everything. I just, man, I don't. Sometimes time when it comes like trying to do all these different things. So yeah, I'm in the process of building, getting my website up and out. But once it is, you'll be able to find it. I have the link tree on my Instagram or my on the face on my Facebook account that you can ping and you can find all the different connections and how to find me. But if you're on
Cool.
Instagram, it's Mediocre Dads. It's mediocre underslash. Is it underslash? I don't know.
Underscore.
Underscore. There we go. Dads. And if you're on Facebook, it's Mediocre Dads. And then YouTube, it's Mediocre Dads. So everything's Mediocre Dads. It's made it
Sweet,
really
man.
easy and simple to find. But yeah, that's where you can find me. And if you want to talk some more, if anybody wants to reach out, I'm all for it. I have my email is mediocredads2@gmail.com.
Awesome. I'll put all those links both on the website and in the show notes. So make it easy for you guys. You don't have to remember all that. But I'd say go follow, subscribe, rate, like all those things because I've listened to a number of episodes and I love it. It's great. And honestly, like it's been honest conversation, right? You're talking to some guys that have different perspectives and come from different places in life than I have. And
Mhm.
to your point before, it's whether it's skilled dad or mediocre dads, if we're listening to it, we have interest in becoming better dads or parents. Our common bond is dads, we're parents. And I would venture to say many of you probably heard some of the things we said and oh, you know what? Yeah, guilty. Do that too. And that just shows how alike we are. And if we start feeling maybe a different way than what I just described, I think we're listening to the wrong channels.
Mm.
Turn off the channel and let's build stuff together. That's where magic happens, and we're gonna teach our kids to build that too. That's my small rant, but man, both our conversation before we had this and then today have been a blast. The time's flown, so I'd love to jump on here again with you sometime and keep the conversation going if you're open for it.
Absolutely. I'm always open to talk. I love this. Like I said, I appreciate you having me on here and I appreciate you taking the time and just talking to me, listening to me rant and allowing me to rant. I know I go on tangents, so I appreciate it and I would love to get on your show again as long as you'll have me.
Yeah, man. I think you were on point, but we'll let the listeners be the judge. As I said, that sounds
Yes.
so dramatic. Now, Q, I appreciate it, and we'll definitely be in touch. And I also have somebody I want to hook you up with. He's been on this show before and went through an adoption process from the other end. And I think that you guys have a phenomenal conversation, whether on or off the mic. Um,
Awesome.
and Peyton, if you're listening, expect a text. All right. Thanks, Q, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Guys, if you made it to this part, something's kept you on. You've been listening. You've made it for like almost an hour. And so I know that you've had some takeaways from Q's story, he and I's conversation. And I hope it's things that you can connect with and that you're like, what? Yep, there's some good reminders in here. And I want to take that extra step to go and continue to push myself, whether it's a dad bod moment, whether it's we need to go dance with our wife and make sure the kids see, or maybe it's we need to go dance with our wife. I don't care if the kids see or not, because kids are going to grow up and your wife's still going to be there. So let's not goof that one up. And if you think of someone through some of these stories, share it with them. That's a good opportunity to start that connection that we talked about. Hey, man, I heard this story, reminded me of something you and I talked about, or remind me of something you're going through. Send it to them. And then that's an opportunity to go ahead and start forging that. And I say forging because it is building relationship through intentionality. And it's going to feel awkward if you don't do it at first. And then next thing you know, you got a buddy that's going to kick you in the pants. And that's what we all need. You can follow us on Skilled Dad at Skilled Dad on all the socials. And if you have a story that you want to share, reach out to me, Zach at SkilledDad.com. Love to hear your story. We can connect. And at the end of the day, the reason that I do this show, it sounds like the reason that Q has Mediocre Dads is so that we can help. And the way that I am trying to help is to connect guys that may not have those connections right away and that get stuck in the place where they think, oh, I think I'm the only one. I got to reinvent the wheel or I got to figure this out alone. You don't. So being dad should not be DIY. That's left for benches and chicken coops and all the fun stuff like that. So we'll see you guys on the next episode. But until then, go build something and enjoy your ride on your journey to becoming the skilled dad.